Hello and welcome to session 5. Thank you again for your continued participation. I greatly appreciate you and the work you are doing, which in return is helping me tremendously. Here's the overview of sessions. So we're at session 5. We're just about done with this professional development. Today we are focusing on discussion moves that are done by the teacher while we plan another text-based discussion. We have two objectives we are working towards in this session. We are going to learn quite a few discussion moves and the purpose behind them. In addition, we will be planning another discussion with special attention to the discussion moves we'd like to use to help facilitate the students' comprehension. So to begin, what are discussion moves? So researchers Isabel Beck and Margaret McGowan, which are the authors of the book that you're seeing right there called Improving Comprehension with Questioning the Author, they define discussion moves as actions that teachers take to help orchestrate students' participation and the development of ideas. So whether you call them discussion moves or we could also refer to them as teacher moves, they are ways we respond to students during the discussion. So the purpose behind some of these moves are maybe you're acknowledging a student's contribution, you might be connecting ideas between students, you are getting the students to gather text evidence, or possibly probing the students to expand beyond their initial thought. So I would like you to watch the Magic Markers and Secret Signals video again. You saw this video during session 1, but this time I want you to pay close attention to the way the teacher responds to the students. So how does she facilitate the discussion? You're going to record your thoughts on the Google Doc for this session, which the Google Doc can be found by, I'm going to get out of the presentation here, show you. So on the Google Drive, again, this is the screen, the main screen that you'll see. You're going to go to session 5. And then there's quite a few documents here. So here is the video. It's the first thing listed. So you just open it and then obviously play it. So that's the video you're going to watch. And then you're going to click on whichever document is your guided notes, which looks like this. Oops. It's not supposed to be there. So what you're going to do is either as you're watching the video or after you watch the video, I want you to find at least 3 examples of discussion moves that the teacher uses in that video. So in this column over here, so whatever your first one is, I just want you to kind of write what the teacher said. And then on this side, so what is the purpose of the move? So why do you think the teacher used this discussion move? Or what did it do to the discussion, or either to the discussion or for the students? And then again, find another example of a response that she had, and then again, the purpose. So if you could at least do 3, you can do more if you'd want, but at least 3 would be good. So go ahead and pause the presentation so you can watch the video and respond. Okay, so now that you've watched the video and kind of talked about some of the purpose of the discussion moves yourself, we're going to go into a little more detail about various moves and why we would use them. We're going to look at some examples. So these are some examples of discussion moves. There is an entire document with the ones you're seeing plus some other ones in our Google Drive in session 5 folder. I can show you in a little bit. So many of these examples should look familiar because we already do them. This document just kind of puts a name to the actual move. However, there are other moves on here that I know I don't normally use but would like to implement more. So for instance, the linking student comments. So let me get to that one. So we have collect, probe, turn back to text, revoice, recap or summarize, and then manage student behavior, which we know is definitely something we are doing during discussions. But the top for this one, so linking student comments is one that I would like to begin to implement more in my discussion. So this move will get students to do a couple of things. One, they will be actively listening to their classmates. And two, it will get students to talk with each other rather than give their response directly to the teacher. So Beck and McCowan state that it's important to help students understand that the goal of the discussion is that it's a connected conversation, not just a string of individuals turning to talk. I think getting students beyond the traditional approach of responding to the teacher instead of their classmates is a goal for many of us. So, and we had talked about like the IRE, which is initiate, response, and then evaluate. So you ask a question, the student responds, and then you kind of give like a yay or nay to their response, and then you keep it moving. Linking student comments is obviously going to get very far away from that as it's working to get students to talk with each other and paying attention to their students' response instead of just responding to the teacher. So again, I want you to just pause the presentation and just read through the chart, which if we go back to the Google Drive, it's the second one right here. It's called Guide for Analyzing Teacher Responses. So many of these some of it we came up with, me and my other classmates and my professor, and then a couple of them were added from my other classmates. So this is not like an end-all be-all list. There's definitely many other ways that discussion moves are used by teachers, but this is just kind of some examples. So just pause the presentation just so you can read through them and kind of understand what exactly the explanation is, and then a possible example from a discussion. Okay, so I wanted to also show some examples from transcriptions of discussions. So I put the part of the transcription from Finding Winnie that was used in session 4 here so we could analyze it for teacher moves now. So there I have highlighted the 2 responses from the teacher. In the first response to Lorelai, the teacher begins by restating Lorelai's thought. And then from there, she expands on Lorelai's idea by saying, we all know war is dangerous. Even though Harry is going to take care of animals, it is still a dangerous place. So the teacher there is adding on or expanding off of Lorelai's idea that bringing the bear to the war, that it would be dangerous because the bear could die. Then in the next response to Owen, so the teacher marks Owen's response, and by marking it, you are identifying the student's name and then what they said. So the teacher's saying, so Owen is picking up on the most dangerous creature, and he's thinking that the colonel is concerned that the bear will hurt someone else. And then from there is calling on another student. And then I provided another example from the Holocaust article, which was also part of session 4. So in her first response to Natalie, she's summarizing Natalie's thoughts again, and then she evaluates it by saying good. In the second response, the teacher labels the student thinking by saying that they were able to visualize what the author is actually explaining. And then she's also noticing that the two students were coming up with the similar idea with the word panic. So in this last example, this is from my Hidden Figures discussion. The ones that I highlighted here, I want you to actually try to identify the discussion moves on your own. So again, pause the presentation and move over to the Google Doc, which I will show you exactly what I'm looking for. So when you open up on your guided notes, which would already be open from watching the video, if you scroll down, I have my transcript here, and I kind of put each of my responses in a box. And then next to it, I'd like you to try to identify what move was used you can use this chart here to kind of help you. Some of them I did for you, just so you could kind of get an idea. So like for the very first one, I probed Yanaya. So I wanted for her to give me some more reasoning and explanation after her initial response. In this example right here, I was asking for additional thinking. So I kind of wanted to get some other students to participate and share something that we had not talked about yet. And the last one I did for you. At the end here, I was annotating. So I gave the information that at that time women did not work, let alone have a job like being a computer at NASA. So that was not provided in the text explicitly. So I kind of was giving some information there that would definitely be a gap. So you can pause the presentation and just go through and try to identify which discussion move was being used there. And again, obviously use this document to help. One other thing I forgot. If you notice a teacher move here and you don't think it really fits anything on this chart, you can kind of name it yourself or just describe it yourself. Because like I said, that chart does not have every discussion move possible. Okay, so go ahead and pause and do that. Come on back when you're ready. Okay, so in addition to the teacher moves, this session is also focused on making a second discussion plan. So this is a screenshot of the discussion plan document. It should look familiar since It's pretty much the same from the first one you did. However, a column has been added, column number 5, which is identifying teacher moves that you kind of plan to use, want to try to use. I'm going to show you some examples from my plan in just a minute. So you'll notice it has the numbered steps, and they don't necessarily fall in order. I find it easier just to write my central understanding. So at the end of this, what do I want my students to understand? And then from there, start at column 1 and just move my way through up to column 6. So that way, just makes a little more sense as you're going through and analyzing the text. So here is my example. That was my discussion, my second discussion. So it was a text I got from Reading A to Z on Malala Yousafzai. I highlighted the teacher move column. So these are 2 different text segments here that you're seeing. I know you may think that it's difficult to plan for teacher moves as you can't plan for the way the discussion will go. However, you may find areas in the text that are going to need you to respond in a certain way. So, for example, if you're looking at the part of my plan on the left, part of the text talks about Malala working for the United Nations and earning a Nobel Peace Prize. And I knew this was something that my students did not have background knowledge on. So I planned for my teacher move, which is there highlighted in that purple, that I was going to need to annotate information about the United Nations and the Nobel Peace Prize so that they would understand that part of the text a little more. In my other example on the right over here, when I was asking my students, I wanted them to speak about, how we could describe Malala from what we had learned so far. I knew I was going to want to probe my students after their initial response. So for example, if a student says that she's brave, I wanted to probe by following up with what makes you say that. Okay, so this is just kind of some things to think about as you are planning your discussion and the type of teacher moves that you want. My entire discussion plan is in the Session 5 folder that you can obviously look through and, reference it as you need. Okay, something I just wanted to review was creating prompts. So here was my central understanding for the Malala text. I will give you a minute to read that there. Okay, so I had my central understanding written. I, made sure I covered all points that I wanted my students to understand by the end of our reading and by the end of the discussion. So below the central understanding, there were 3 examples of my of my prompts. So when you're creating your prompts or writing your questions, You always want them to be able to build on the central understanding. So that way there is a purpose on why you're asking that question at that time in the text. So here I provided some highlighting color coordination that might help show my point here. So in my very first prompt, I wanted students to talk about what they had learned from Malala's father. And this was important for the students to understand because in my central understanding there in orange, I wanted them to know that Malala's father had been fighting for education for children in Pakistan well before the Taliban started to take over. So there is an emphasis on education and its importance in Malala's family from when she was first born and as she grew up. Okay, so you can see that prompt is building towards the central understanding. In the second prompt example there that I have, I was asking the students, what does the author tell us about the Taliban? So again, in my central understanding, I have that the Taliban is a group of people who have strong beliefs about their religion. One of those beliefs is that women should have limited rights, like the chance to attend school. So students' understanding about the Taliban and kind of their views and how they're influencing the people in Pakistan was obviously extremely important for students to understand in this text. So you can see how that prompt is building towards the central understanding. And in my last example, I have this prompt towards the end of the text when I'm asking students, what can we say about her impact at this point in her life? And again, it's building on the part of my central understanding when I say that even though her life was at risk, she continued to go to school. And because of her bravery and continued fight for women's rights, she is considered an international inspiration. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of review this part just so that when you are creating your prompts for the second discussion, that you have a focus on the prompts, why you're asking, like what is even the purpose of asking it, and that it's going to build on the central understanding, because at the end of this, that's what we want the students to gain from the discussion. Okay, so for next time, it will be our last session. Yay! But before then, I need you to complete your second discussion plan. Then do your discussion plan with anyone in your house. Okay, so it could be your own children. If you don't have children in your home, you can do it with adults. Even if you are doing children and the text level is like way below the age of your children, it's totally fine. If you need me to have the discussion with, we can meet on Google Meets and we can do it that way. School was already closed when I needed to do my second discussion a couple weeks ago, so I did it with two other classmates and my professor, and the information I gained from it was still extremely useful for myself. So it definitely, it's definitely okay to do it with adults. Okay. And then again, from after you do the discussion, just kind of have to transcribe part of that discussion between you and whoever's playing your students for one part of the conversation that was really productive. The person or the students really got to the learning target, and one area of the discussion that did not did not go the way you had planned. If you could have this done by Monday, that would be great. So that I can use some of your work to be able to plan for session 6. Again, if you need anything or if you have questions, obviously I'm pretty available, that I can, help you with any part of this. I, again, cannot thank you enough for your work in this. It's helping me in more ways than you will ever know. Before I end this presentation, I just wanted to show you back in the Google Drive. So the third document listed here is my discussion plan for Malala the Brave. So if you want to see the text, I have it linked here. So this was the text I used. I got it from Reading A to Z. They have some really, really good text on there. If you need the school login, let me know if you want to find your text from there. So here's the text if you want to look through it. And then here is my discussion plan. So I had my central understanding, which you've already read. The launch, you don't have to worry about that. That was something else that we did. And then, here's my text segment here. My text segment, this is kind of my summary of the segment. This was my learning target, so what I wanted students to take away from this segment. What was the most important part I wanted them to get from it? Here is, a possible challenge, them not understanding what it meant by Muslim traditions. The teacher move I planned for was revoicing students' comments. And then here is the prompt. It's my very last thing. Okay. So you can, look through this. For your reference if you'd like. And let me see if there was anything else. I think that's it. The rest of the stuff is the guided notes that go along with this presentation, and then your document for your discussion plan. Okay? So again, let me know if there is anything you need. I'm here. Thanks again.